Welcome to Table Talk with TLC. I'm your host Siddhansh, and today I have one of my favorite professors with me, Anirudh Tagat, or AT. Hi AT, how are you? No.
Hey, Siddhansh, I'm good. Thanks for having me and thanks for your kind words. I'm doing
Yeah,
good. Thanks. How are
like
you?
I totally mean that. I mean,
Mhm.
and I don't think that was just me. I think that was our whole batch because I think you're one of the few professors who managed to pull an attendance of more than 80 people for the whole semester.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
don't know how I did it. So, yeah,
oh, I was gonna ask how you did it. I mean,
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think it was the memes, but I'm not
yeah,
sure.
like the
Yeah.
memes were, and I think it was
Yeah.
it was a lot. It was the memes. It was the way you presented stuff because I don't think I had to read a book to prepare for my exams. I just had to go through your PPTs, and I think that was enough. So is it like your way of teaching economics, or is it like economics for liberal arts in general? Because when I talk to other people who studied economics, maybe in BCom or in any other field,
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
are telling me that their economics is more like totally different. Like they have what calculations and formulas and shit.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's on my own style. Like, I think even in other like liberal arts courses, economics is taught from an economics point of view, and that comes down to like how economists are trained, like for good or for worse. Like, most economists are trained to think mathematically, think sort of through problems in a very specific way. Whereas I think the approach that I try to bring is just that it's just a perspective, I think, and that's important in a liberal arts course more than anything, like because especially for first year undergrads, right? So I mean, you get exploring more or less on what are the different things that you like. So I think it's important to present economics as just a perspective on how human beings behave, how society functions, things like that. So that's really what I try to do through my teaching, because I think if you try to teach economics as a science, especially to first year undergrads, then you're likely going to get a lot of pushback. So
Yeah, like that was something that I noticed in your course. Like it was a lot of problem solving. It was a lot of like, okay, this is your situation. How do you look at this? How do you solve this? Because even our assignments, they were nothing like plot a graph or write a report. Like
yeah,
they were more of like, okay, you're in this situation. Now what do you do? Like how do you do? Because even the first assignment that I remember doing, that was something that I picked out of my real life to do it for
Hmm,
you.
hmm,
and
hmm.
and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that the purpose of yeah, I mean, I think more broadly, I also I don't remember if I mentioned this in class, but I think the way that I like to teach is how I would have liked to have been taught. So basically, if I was sitting in your position, then I would like something that grabs my attention, and that also at the same time kind of makes me think about what it is that I'm reading, what it is that I'm engaging with in class. And I think the assignments are a good way of really testing that a little bit. I try not to take it too seriously, because I think that the idea is that it's important to experiment, try out a few things, just explore your own sort of boundaries of thinking about a particular subject or a particular field. And at the end of the day, like yeah, it's, I think if you get even halfway in terms of applying the material that we cover in class in terms of your assignments, then that's a big win for me. So yeah.
Because also I think economics as a subject is extremely like intertwined with our lives. It's
Yeah.
First of all, it's very fundamental, and second of all, it's also very visible in the real world. Like if you look at
Yeah.
the hard sciences, if you look at, let's say, physics, chemistry, biology, there's they are fundamental, but you're still not interacting with them every day in your life, right? But with something like an economics, you are interacting with it on an everyday level. If you're talking about demand supply, you're seeing demand supply anywhere and everywhere around you. I don't think there's any economical transaction
Yeah.
that, like, in any
Yeah.
transaction that you were in, it's all about that. So from
Yeah.
that point of view, I think we are looking, like, even in school my mom is an economics teacher, and
Nice.
when I sat through those books of 11th and 12th grade, I was like, I don't think I get this. I mean, I think we're doing this. I think we're
Yeah.
doing economics fundament in 11th and 12th. At least I think we're doing it wrong. But
Mm,
if we want to do it like that in 11th and 12th, we should at
mm,
least introduce it at an earlier stage, right? Because something like
yeah.
science, we are introduced to it at a very early
I,
age.
yeah.
And so I think that when we taught science in 11th and 12th, we are we done some kind of justice to that.
Yeah.
But with
No, I
economics, I
agree. I
don't
mean,
think it's that.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know much about how economics is taught at the school level. I think that also I don't think that it's taught to everybody, right? So I think that in some schools it's offered, some schools it's not there.
Yeah.
In some boards it's there, in some other boards it's not even there. So I think that yeah, certainly like you know, young people, and I say young people, assuming that I'm not young anymore, but the idea is that students in school are beginning to obviously demand that you start learning things that you can actually apply in real life, which is like
Hmm.
it's almost like it's almost common sense, like that you should teach something that people can actually use in their lives. Which is not to say like things like Pythagoras theorem and like what an electron does are not important in life. It's just that I think the emphasis that we place on learning things like you said exactly about economics or even psychology or even sociology for that matter, like I don't think that we learn it early enough in life. And that's really why when I got so many requests from students and so much feedback from people in your batch as well as people who are currently in JDSOLA about how they thought that the economics would be all mathematical problem solving and things like that. And I don't say that the economics is not meant to be problem solving. It's just that what is your approach to problem solving, right? Like, is it just
Hmm.
building equations and sort of doing math and algebra and statistics, or is it thinking about these problems? And I think that the thinking part of the problems is particularly important in a liberal arts context. And I
Hmm.
think that's my whole philosophy and objective when it comes to that. I don't claim to have philosophies otherwise in life. Like it's mostly just on these smaller things. But yeah, I agree with what you said. It's definitely something that we should get much earlier in life.
Yeah, because if we are talking about, let's say, Pythagoras theorem or maybe electrons, I think apart from the utility, what they're doing is they're providing a first principle of thought to students about mathematics, about science.
Yeah,
But when we come to economics, like for maths and science, it's like years of building fundamentals and then going
that
for
yeah,
advanced. But
yeah,
with economics, it's like, okay, you enter 10th grade, you enter 11th grade, or whatever grade it is, and like, okay, there's just a couple of months of fundamentals, which are not fundamentals, they're actually terminologies which you will use in your answer.
yeah,
And then we
definitions.
jump onto the
Yeah,
advanced stuff. And
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's why, particularly as a country, we don't have a good relationship with money as well, because we don't understand economics.
Yeah. I think that so this course that I use for teaching you guys is from this project called Core,
Hmm.
and it basically has a wonderful textbook which you guys were all prescribed, which is the econ. I think that just when I came across that book for the first time, and that was actually when I was first offered like a visiting faculty gig at JDSOLA, and then I was teaching two courses one in international economics and one in called comparative economic systems, and I was just like, there's no way that I can teach these courses as they are. Because I don't think I'm capable of making them interesting. So I said that what else is out there? What can I link to this material so that it at least becomes something that I find remotely interesting. Like it's secondary to me if the students find it remotely interesting or not. Like if they find it nice and if they find it fun, that's good for them. But for me, I can't teach something that I myself, don't completely believe in or
Like,
don't enjoy. So that's where I came across course work, and I think it's brilliant because this is really the direction in which economics training in India needs to go, not just in India, world over. I think there's plenty of time at a master's stage, at a PhD stage, if people really want to get into academic economics. That's where we should be focusing on things like learning this theorem and sort of applying this sort of long mathematical formula to it. And I think especially in liberal arts sort of undergrad context, like you can probably, I think, still achieve a good understanding of economics without sort of leaning on a lot of those things.
yeah, yeah, because I mean, like the traditional economic stuff, it's anyway going to be automated, or you're going to like delegate it. But
Yeah,
the first principle, the thought that comes along, you should, I think that that's what carries you through everything, not just
yeah,
your classes. So
exactly.
that's the thing. So tell me about your company, Monk Prayogshala. What is it like? I knew that you were part of it since the beginning, but I didn't get a chance to ask you about it because on your
Um,
emails are signed with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so Monk Prayogshala is a not-for-profit academic research organization, and it's based in Powai, in Mumbai. And basically, I've been associated with Monk since a very long time, but I was not the found. I'm not the founder, and I don't have any sort of stake in it. But it was founded by a couple of my friends, and basically, it looks at one of the main objectives of Monk Prayogshala is to advance the state of academic research in India, especially in the social sciences. And in part for many of the reasons that we just discussed, which is that I think the training in social sciences is a little bit, social science research specifically, is a little bit inadequate. So we're just really trying to bridge that gap. And I think now more and more universities, institutes, everybody from undergrad to postgrad are sort of laying emphasis on doing research. But I think that the skills or the tools that students have to do this research is often quite inadequate. So we're trying to bridge that gap over there, and at the same time, kind of show them that this is, if you do research in a particular way, then it's likely to get into so-called good journals and sort of good places where it will be broadly accepted by the world sort of global community of researchers, so to speak. So we're trying to up the level of research that's being done in India. And the second thing that we do is basically through capacity building. So one is through doing the research itself and showing that we can do this kind of research in India as well. It's not that only the Harvards or the MITs or LSEs of the world can do this research. Even we can. And the second thing is then to train and build capacity for younger early career researchers in India, so that not this is not like a dichotomy where we say that so that they don't go abroad, so that there's no brain drain and things like that. Like, they're absolutely free to continue doing that, but the idea is that they should have, within India itself, they should have some way in which they can continue connecting with research, continue building their skill set when it comes to research, and independent research, more importantly, right? So not research that relies on some sort of institutional like affiliation or dependency in any way. And the last thing we do is also work with a lot of NGOs, a lot of research funding agencies and things like that, to basically do more fieldwork based research, which might speak to some specific policy problem, it might speak to some social problem, something like this, but in a way that allows us to say that research is not something that solely academics do for the sake of science and for the sake of advancing knowledge, right? So research is something that we want to use to better society. This is, we're not, at some point, I think we harbored some sort of ambition to be, like basic researchers, and basic in the sense doing research for the sake of doing research. But I think quickly it became evident to us that, we were going to, we needed to speak to other people who could use research in India, who also could, talk about where research fits in with, their program. For example, if an NGO is doing like really good COVID relief work, then it's important for them to systematically assess whether this COVID relief work is actually benefiting the individuals that they want to benefit, right? So, and the way to do that is through research. If a government agency is designing or considering a policy that is meant to benefit lactating mothers and their nutrition or something like this, then they need to know that it's working or that it's not working, so that then tomorrow they can go back and tell the taxpayers like you and I that, hey, this is not working, so we changed this, right? So it's also meant to, in a way, democratize research, to say that
I was just gonna say that.
this is not some, yeah, exactly, that is not something that only the big institutions of the world can do, or even the big institutions, the IITs, the IIMs, and the ISCs of the world can do. It's also something that you and I can do. It may not be earth-shattering research, but the whole point of research is that it's not always earth-shattering, and there's value in doing that. So that's really, I think, in a nutshell, what we do, and I think what we're driven by.
Yeah. So, like, if I So from what you explained, if I look at research as a whole, then especially like if I look at research, especially academic research, and I compare India with America, there I think America, in terms of researchers, could be the intellectual capital of the world because there I think their academicians, their researchers, they're as famous, if as famous as their, you know, as famous and as respected as their celebrities. I
Hmm.
think I know more American researchers and academians, like academic professors or something like that, more than like I know their actors or more. I think they're more influential than their actors. They're
Yeah.
more influential all over
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
And why do you think it is not that case with India? Why do you think that India as a country was left behind in research? Because we, for that matter, have had the greatest minds the world has ever seen. Like if you
Yeah.
look back at our scientists, you know,
Yep.
especially in
Yep.
hard sciences, we've been like at
Yep.
forefront. But
Yeah.
why not social
Um,
sciences?
I mean, I think that's probably a hard question to pin down because I still think that in India, like you said, hard science researchers, especially like chemists, mathematicians, physicists, people working in technology, all of these guys, like I think they are still very much doing like probably the world's best work in India, and many of them are housed in like IITs and IST and things like that. So I think the idea is that. How do we get the public at large to appreciate their efforts in terms of what it is that they're doing?
Hmm.
And what you said about say American academics or American researchers, I think it's kind of hit and miss sometimes. Like some people will know a lot about who famous professors are and who like Nobel laureates are and things like that, but I think at the same time, given how much society has benefited from the science that Indian scientists do, I think that's always been a challenge. I think that for a variety of reasons, I don't know if like I should get into all of them, but it's like if you look at American researchers, let's say even just social science researchers, they have access to a lot of data. They have access to sort of big statistical software if they need it. They have access to peer networks, like they can just pick up the phone, talk to each other, discuss their ideas and things like that. So all of these different things contribute to how productive American academia can be, right? And I'm using American academia as one example. You have general Western academia, right? So they benefit off of things like good funding, good peer networks, and sort of then being able to be held account to say that this science matters for people. Like we are not doing science just because, or we're not doing research just because we want to get like a big publication or a big grant or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in India we haven't systematically been able to build that culture or trying to build that ecosystem, I would say. I think in recent years there's a push towards it, but I think that like if you look at many other countries, scientists and researchers were the drivers of innovation, right? But in India, what's been happening, I think, especially recently, is that the private sector is the sort of vanguard of innovation, right? So when Prime Minister Modi talks about Startup India or talks about new schemes, he's looking at the private sector. He's looking at startups to do R&D, to like develop like new ways to store vaccines and things like this, right? He's not saying that people at IISc should come up with this, or he's not saying that IIT Bombay should come up with this. It doesn't mean that they don't. It just means that the incentives to do that are so much more salient for
Yeah.
people in the
Yeah.
private sector. So I think that's really where it comes from. I think that if scientists were at the forefront of contributing a lot more, to things in society, then they would become rock stars, like you say, or they would become celebrities as well. But I don't think that we have reached that stage, and maybe I don't think that we will reach that stage because right now the way that innovation works, the way that how research contributes to society, I think it's very sort of evolved. It's evolved in a completely different direction, I think, in India right now. Yeah, it probably comes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that in school, I don't think that we are taught about Indian researchers who did great things, but we do often hear about like the Googles and the Facebooks of the world. So then it somehow gives us this impression that Indian scientists are not really doing anything, or the Indian researchers are not really working on anything. So yeah, I guess maybe start early. I think that might help.
Yeah, I think something like that has left like a gap or a dent to the Indian intellectual, like Indian intellectual unconscious, if I would were to use like Alim's
Yeah.
terms, because if you because this gap, it feels so wide, right? Because like if you look at any sort of Western, and I'm using America as an example because I consume American intellectualism a lot. Like if
Yeah.
you look at
Yeah.
like the top podcasts in America, let's just say, they're hosted like the world's biggest is obviously Joe Rogan, but they are by like either they are by businessmen or they are by like academics. Like either it's Tim Ferriss, either it's Naval, or it's Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein. All of these guys. These guys
Yeah.
they have credibility. But if you look at like the leading podcast in India, that's run by a businessman. And again,
Yeah.
that's one part. That's a tech part where we've you know done pretty well. Like I think India will see a tech revolution coming in the next 20 years, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
because as more and more people get into tech, I think tech is something somewhere where India can take a lead from itself. Because I think
Yeah.
America has already passed the tech stage, or even
Yeah.
any Western world, any Western country has passed the tech stage where the tech is really good, where the tech has been innovated at a good
Yeah.
level. That's why they have their Apples and their Googles.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas and anyway, like we've been independent for what, like 70 years. So like if you look at
Yeah.
70 years, it's
Yeah.
really less. Like if you talk to people,
Yeah.
like 70 years is nothing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think India will see a tech revolution and then maybe a social science revolution, because I think that's
Yeah.
important, right? Because
Yeah. I mean, I think that in terms of the good thing that's happening is that I don't know if it's because of the way in which education is also changing slowly but surely. In a way that people like you, for example, tomorrow, if you wanted to, which I know that you're already doing a startup, but I mean, if tomorrow,
like
you
it's
wanted to. Yeah, I mean, if you think about who is going to be founding the startups of tomorrow, it's going to be people like you. And people like you don't necessarily come from the same background that founders of startups did about even 10-15 years ago, or even 5 years ago for that matter. Like, so and that's going to have a big impact in the way in which we position future technologies, right? So Siddhansh is not going to create a technology that doesn't benefit poor people or that doesn't benefit marginalized people, because he comes from a background and he comes with an education that tells him that these things are important in
yeah.
society, right? So I think that in a big way itself is going to integrate a lot of what we see with I think how socially conscious I think, and how socially directed some of these new technologies and new startups are going to be.
Yeah, because yeah, like this is how do I say this? Because like if we go back to our past, it like the known past that there is, so we know that
Yeah,
India was like might have been an intellectual capital of the world at a point in time, because it
yeah,
said that all the
it
basic
did.
fundamentals of
Yeah,
the basic principles, like if you look
yeah,
at Gita, for example, I think that's the
yeah,
oldest fully Indian Indic text. I would use the word Indic,
sure,
not Indian exactly, Indic,
sure.
because
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
like where we live. So like we're living in Indic reality, and that's like a social, a proper, how do I say? It's a foundation to build upon.
yeah. Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
think the Western world had that, because the Western world, if you look at it, it was built on, like, all social sciences are somewhat built on religion. After, like,
Hmm.
they are built upon, the ideas are built upon after religion is there, and the Western world, they built their ideas upon an Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
if we as an Indic reality were built upon the Gita, I think
Hmm.
that would that would be something that the world has never seen. I think we could, like, quickly, we could not exactly quickly, but we could change the whole landscape of how the world thinks at large if we were to become an intellectual capital. Because
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I think that I certainly agree that there's a lot of this sort of social and cultural influence, and in terms of heritage that India has, so to speak, that should be driving, how we innovate, how we do research, how we do science. But I think at the same time, like, it's important that we speak in a language.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, what were you saying?
I don't remember now, but I think I was just saying that I think it's like important to, I think it's important to draw, like, science is almost always science and research always almost a function of, where we come from, what heritage we have, and sort of, all of these different sociocultural sort of, which I'm broadly calling sociocultural. But I mean, the idea is that I think at the same time today, the challenge that we face is being able to translate that, like, you use it in a productive way, so that it doesn't, in any way dilute or diminish what is at the center of it, right? So if you're doing innovation, which maybe has Indic roots, like you're saying, that's fine. But I think it still has to face up to the challenge of being able to speak and be useful to so many different people in India, being sort of drawing on UX UI principles, for example, right? So all of those things are still, I think, equally important.
Yeah, I think it needs to get updated to survive, because
exactly.
I think in the past we were thinking as we were basing our ideas around religion, and that's what our culture was based upon. But for a better society to come along, I think we're gonna need to base our thinking on research, and that research should be again updated, like all over, so that it can survive. It can survive, because if religion doesn't get updated, I don't think there's any use to that, because obviously. So that was one thing. That was one tangent that I didn't plan on going on, but we did. I think that was that was great.
That was nice.
Yeah. So, like, other than like teaching and your, like, the Monk Prayogshala, what do you do otherwise? Like, what do you do for fun?
What I do for fun, I stay indoors all day because there's a pandemic going on in the world. But well, I mean, I used to play the bass guitar, like, when I was in Bangalore. Like, so my brother plays. So I have a twin. I think I've mentioned that he's a journalist for Rolling Stone magazine in India. And he's freelance now, but anyway, he mostly writes about music. But he's been a big influence on me in terms of how I think about music. He plays the guitar quite often, and he's been playing it for a long time. So I was like, somewhere along the line, I thought that, okay, maybe let's jam. And like, I got a bass guitar. I used to play the bass guitar for a while. It's still stuck in Bangalore, so I haven't played it in about, I want to say, 3 years. So it's probably not something I can say I do for fun anymore. I do play.
When you said you play bass guitar, like, in Bangalore, I thought you visited like a couple of months ago and then.
No, I haven't. Man, to be honest, I haven't moved. I haven't moved at all in the last 1.5 years. So that's kind of how it's been.
Not even much outside your house.
No, not even much outside my house. Like, the farthest I think I went was once my brother was visiting from Bangalore, so we went to pick him up at the airport, and that was it. I haven't really been very far. I do play a game called Pokemon Go, because I'm a big fan of Pokemon. As a kid, I think we used to do the trading cards thing and like a bunch of other stuff. And then when this AR game came out on mobile phones, I was like, oh, it's nice. Like, might be a good time pass. And now, like, it's literally sucked me, and then I haven't been able to stop playing.
But doesn't that require you to move a lot? Like,
it does. How do you do that? Yeah, so that's right. I don't do it anymore, so it's become more challenging. But I suppose that's part of the challenge of the game. Like, I think they've adapted the game pretty nicely to be played in the pandemic. It still I think benefits and advantages a lot of the people who can still go out. But even if you are sitting at home, like, there are some things that you can still play and you can still enjoy the game, I suppose. So at least that's how I convince myself.
I remember playing that game around 4 years ago, I think.
Most people played it like when it came out, and then stopped.
I remember that it was like July or August.
Yeah.
And I'm moving on my, like, on the roads, and there's water all like, because obviously monsoon. And Sometimes I'm drenched when I'm coming home, but I'm still going out.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think it was, it's a good, and it also kept me fit for the longest time. I think obviously after the pandemic, it's been a little bit more challenging, but I think it helped me go out and just meet other people and
walk.
think it was nice. Yeah, walking, lots of walking. And
Yeah.
what else do I do? I read a lot of graphic novels.
Oh.
Like recently I completed a graphic novel that actually combines my passion for research and science with graphic novels. So there's this book
Hmm.
called no, it was on Boundaries. I'm forgetting the name of the book now, but it's by the guy who does Saturday morning breakfast serial, SMBC. His name is Zach Weinstein, I think. And he collaborated with an international trade theorist. And basically, they wrote an amazing graphic novel on migration. I think it's called Open
Oh.
Borders. And
Oh.
yeah, it was really fantastic. I really enjoyed reading it. It was geeky in the way that I would expect it to be. So yeah.
Yeah. So, like, do you watch? Like, I think do you watch anime?
I started watching a little bit of Studio Ghibli, but that I know that doesn't count as anime. But I do watch a lot of animated shows though, which are not not the same as anime. So like I'm a big fan of The Simpsons. I watch a lot of BoJack. I used to watch a lot of BoJack
BoJack is
Horseman.
awesome.
Yeah, BoJack and
Rick and Morty.
yeah, Rick and Morty, a lot of other shows.
South
I
Park.
used to watch South Park and Family Guy, but then I stopped because I didn't like. I think that humor was slowly going down the bin for me, so I didn't really get it anymore. But yeah, I really enjoy watching a lot of The Simpsons, Archer. Like, I mean, usually if you name any animated television show, chances are I've seen it. So yeah, I'm really into a lot of those.
I really like Rick and Morty and South Park. I think those are like my two go-to shows whenever I'm okay. I don't have like nothing to do. Let me just pull up an episode of Rick and Morty, and like because because the humor in especially in Rick and Morty, it's like the kind of humor that people like you and me enjoy, the geeky humor.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I think Rick and Morty is like it has so many sub themes, and like I just I just love the fact that it has female writers and like really diverse writers, because I'm finding more and more that like shows that are written with female writers, or I assume writers who are not basically this trope of white men. I think that they have such rich humor, and it's like speaking to so many different people. And Rick and Morty is one show like that. Like there was this show on Netflix very briefly called Tuca and Bertie that was also very out there. And like there are a whole bunch of other shows which I'm just really enjoying right now, because the diversity of the writers, I think that's really nice.
And it also like they're also playing jokes on themselves, like
themselves. Yeah.
So like it's not that it's typical white man humor. So
exactly,
it's like typical white man humor playing humor on themselves, and they're like themselves, and so that's like a very I don't know. It's too fun to watch. I love it.
So. Yeah, it's really hilarious. I mean, I think one of the things that I hope to see one day is that given the sort of boom in Indian entertainment and sort of very diverse Indian writing that's that web-based platforms have brought about, like I really hope to see a nice Indian animated comedy one day, adult comedy one day. I think that would be nice.
Yeah, like it would be great, because right now, like because when we think of comedy in India, it always either needs to be PG-13. No, it cannot be that, or it needs to be overtly sexual, because you need to get people on there, not because of the comedy, but because of the adult aspect. Most adults I know would not understand Rick and Morty humor. So
yeah, definitely,
something like that.
Yeah, you need to find some balance between, I think, stuff that people would appreciate and also stuff that people would understand. So I guess that's there. But I would love to see that someday.
Yeah, because in India, if the societal because what's fun is even in Rick and Morty, they're making fun of societal taboos, which you do not talk about like in your bedroom. Like you do not talk about your like sister's boyfriend to her in sitting in a family setting. But Rick and Morty does that and shows the absurdity of that. And in India, we cannot show that absurdity. We push it too hard sometimes. where it
sometimes.
becomes like irritating. So something like
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, Rick says something which is extremely, let's just say, funny or absurd, but it's not that everyone in the family is going, oh no, they're just treating it like it's like a
Yeah,
common dinner
like it's a
table
regular
thing.
thing.
It's
Yeah,
a common dinner table
exactly.
thing, and then
Yeah.
they say something else that is funnier, and you're sitting there just wow. So
Yeah, that
yeah.
just happened. Nice. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so we went just from talking about what culture research to
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
how you tell it's a good podcast, man. Okay,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I was reading the news. I was actually listening to the news today, and I there's the lab leak theory for the coronavirus. So for
Mhm.
context for the listeners, there's been a theory going around since the past year that the coronavirus virus it wasn't something which just came from the wet markets, which is like the widely accepted theory that it came out of the wet markets to a bat, then to some other animal, and then to human. That's the widely accepted theory. But there was another theory that was going around that there was a virology lab in Wuhan in China, which was doing some research on same kind of viruses, and that virus broke out of control, and in China, like hid it from the world. And I think in the past 1 year, so in the beginning it was never paid like attention to. It was, if you said it was a Chinese virus, you were either called a racist or you I think people you were pushed down through some other paper by a publishing website called Lancet. I think that was the
Yeah.
website where which realized that the person who wrote that article was in some way or the other in conflict with some, with it was to his benefit to not call it the lab
Mm.
leak theory.
Mm.
So but it recently started getting solidified, and
Yeah.
the question arises now that if, but I don't think that this is like, if this theory gets solidified enough to bring China onto the spot, what does that do to the world? Because China is like the factory for the world. What does that do to the world as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, I certainly, I think the research on the origins of COVID-19 have been, now I think gaining credibility in terms of this particular possibility. And I think that given, earlier I think we said that, the American dispensation, for example, President Trump, if he said something like that, then usually Democrats or like people on generally on the left would dismiss that and say that
I
he's just
think
being
I
an
think
old racist guy.
Trump, I think he said it
It
in a
was, yeah,
racist way. I don't think he really
yeah,
went on to read
yeah.
the lab leak theory.
The science, yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
it's
was
very
just a
possible he came
racist
up
guy.
with it
Yeah,
independently of the science. So,
because like also
but
like the Chinese virus thing was used to
yeah,
hate on
he was
Asians and
using it. Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
against Asians, but yeah,
That's
but
true.
even the academics were like shoved down. So yeah,
Yeah, that's true. No, I think that now, I mean, given that there's this thing floating around, I think that there's a real sort of, I think something that were being discussed. I think same time last year were about economic sanctions on China and kind of lots of other things. But I think the if this was any other country in the world, I think that the world would rally together and they would say that we condemn this wholeheartedly, and we think that everybody should place sanctions on this particular
hmm,
country. But I think you're right. With China, I think it's a little bit more challenging because they are a very big driver of the world's economic growth, and that's for two reasons, right? So one reason is that they are a big manufacturing hub, and the kind of incentives and the kind of, I think, plainly put, just the conditions for manufacturing in China are almost suitable to anybody who wants to sort of set up shop there, production at scale, things like that. But I think the second thing is that given that China faced the outbreak very early on, they are probably now in a position where their economy is back on the upswing. So in a way, they are almost one of the first countries to recover from COVID, both medically as well as economically.
economically.
So in a way, that gives them that advantage, right? So that like they are no longer sort of still trying to pick up their economy, pick up the pieces, things like that. Like they've done all that. They're ahead of
The
us now.
internal conflict is solved, kind
Is
of.
solved, exactly. more or less, I think. So I think in that sense, they have a big advantage, and that's why it's not going to be as easy as saying that we're not going to trade with China anymore. We're not, because they are responsible for some they're potentially responsible for some parts of this. So I don't think that it's going to be that straightforward. But at the same time, there are these other. So there's Mexico. There's a couple of countries in South Asia, such as Southeast Asia, such as Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. So all of these countries are making big headway in terms of benefits to their manufacturing sector globally, and potentially picking up some of the slack from people who didn't want to say go take their business to China anymore. But I don't think that in long term that's sort of very sustainable. I think that, like I said, because China has, it has proceeded to a state of economic growth that's well beyond, say, some other countries, which are still perhaps dealing with the counter effects of the pandemic. They're probably going to come out of this probably much stronger than a lot, and sooner than many other countries. So. When it comes to decisions of like where to produce and how to produce, there's nothing that matters as we've learned in class. Like there's nothing that matters as much as profit. So I think that it's going to be difficult to stick to this threat of say President Biden and things like that, or other countries even saying that we're not going to deal with China anymore. I don't think that that's a credible threat, and I'm pretty sure that the leaders in China already know that, because they are again in a position where they have the best to offer to the world, and it's really not for the world to turn down, because everybody wants to now recover quickly from post-pandemic sort of slump, right? So I think it's going to be difficult for them to turn that offer down. I think that maybe somewhere further down the line, they might slowly try to diversify, how they choose which countries to perhaps deal with. And I think that in there's a lesson for India. I think that in there's potentially some benefit that India can reap if it, makes all the right sounds, and also picks up its labor policies and a whole host of other internal, things that needs to be fixed before that. I think as long as they're able to do that, I think, there might be something down the line where maybe the world is potentially tries to move away from continuous sort of dependency on China. But I still think that that's someday away because of the current situation.
Yeah, because again, at this point, China is, as you said, it has the best to offer to the world, and functionally the world cannot work without it. Like if tomorrow I were to put China out of the global map, then I think it would have a worse effect on the world than the pandemic had.
Yeah.
Like first of all, instantly all your supply chains would go away. There is no option.
Yeah.
And other than that, like where would you find such labor? I mean, India, as you said, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, they capitalized on this opportunity where the industrialists were diversifying in these places, and India could potentially do that as well. And India has the population advantage and the geographical advantage as well. I mean, it's like bagal mein China. Okay, so it's like you don't have to do anything. You just have to pick up a factory and put it in.
Exactly.
So I think in the coming years, if India were to become economically better, then we could, like, along with that, we could look at this sector, and infrastructure could be like be developed on a massive scale. But one problem that I see arising from that, like, feel free to maybe not answer this, but the problem of climate change. If we, like, at this point, India's climate situation is pretty bad. It's not good. Like the AQI is like the lowest in many times, but it's still like 290, 300, which is over emergency. Like 40, 50 in US, they declare emergency and they get people home. But how is there a way to even tackle this, or are we like stuck with either having a good infrastructure or being subjected to like this bad environment?
Well, I think India is in kind of a unique position in that sense, because it's not, compared to other countries, it's not a major carbon emitter, like the United States or Canada, even for that matter. And I think that, government policy in recent years, and I think even before the current government, I think that even then, like, it was kind of attuned to the fact that we eventually have to move away from fossil fuels, and we have to move towards more sort of renewable source of energy, keep our air clean and things like that. But I think that with, like you said, the focus on industrialization, the focus on manufacturing, all of these things are going to be difficult to achieve, in consonance with achieving like clean energy, clean air, clean water, all of these things, right? I think there's no sort of easy answer for that, right? So I think that we need to think pretty strongly about things like electric vehicles, for example. So India has now, in the past, before COVID-19, I think electric vehicles were a big deal. They were, especially because they were so much pumped up during the budget. So I was just wondering sort of where that policy is coming from, because private vehicle ownership in India is definitely going up, but the fraction of people who own private vehicles is so small compared to the to the overall sort of population, right? So people in rural India don't use like private vehicles. They probably use a bus, and if they do own a private vehicle, it's most likely for their business. Like if a farmer owns a private vehicle, it's probably a tractor or something like this, right? So where is that really coming from? I mean, in the sense that, yeah, I appreciate that India's cities are getting congested, they're getting polluted, the air is bad in Delhi especially, but I think that we need to probably rethink about putting all our like resources and things into one particular sort of thinking that this is a golden bullet. Like if we get all cars in India to become electric vehicles, then somehow we will achieve this goal of having lower pollution and things like that. So I think that those are things that probably need to be critically looked at probably a little bit. I'm not saying that electric vehicles won't help solve our air pollution problem, but I don't think that the state of India, especially now following COVID, like I don't think that people are going to be able to afford buying electric vehicles and charge them every now and then, and somehow that in turn contributes to lower air pollution. So I think that the target has to be in line with these manufacturing policies that say the NDA government is introducing sort of SOPs for manufacturers, subsidies, things like that. You also need to very strongly monitor and regulate the kind of emissions that they're contributing to. And I think that it's especially the case in pockets like Delhi, where this has become like almost like world infamous problem, I should say. So, yeah.
Cool. I think we can wrap it up now. I really enjoyed this conversation. How was it for you? I mean, I really came in like unprepared. I asked you, okay, what should you talk about? So how do you like it?
Yeah. No, I loved it. I mean, I think that this is it's always great. I think talking about nothing in particular, but also specific things. And thank you so much for having me. I think that I certainly I don't often have a chance to talk about just random things. So like usually when I set up a call or I set up a meeting, there's like, oh, boom, this is the agenda. We talk about this, and then we're done. So I think that having that opportunity, I think, to just talk about many different things, I think that's something that I really appreciate. So yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, I think it was great for me too. I mean, I generally tend to not talk about macro topics because who's going to listen to this? But I think it was great to bounce off at least ideas with you.
Yeah,
because because like generally you see people talking about macro ideas. They're just what they're saying. They're either like criticizing or providing advice. I don't think any of that works when you're at a micro level and talking about something that is very macro. But bouncing off ideas, maybe speculating, maybe saying how things can go about. Because most of the things that we talked about, they didn't end on a note that was either very happy or something that we should do next. It was just a very descriptive way of talking about things, like how does culture or how does research evolve over the years, or how does this LabLeak theory because even both of us agreed on the fact that there's very less chance that China is getting what vetoed, or it's China is being put on the spot for that. So that is great. I mean,
no, thanks a lot.
Thank you everyone for listening. And I think we'll wrap this up now. Great.